What is up, guys? It's your boy GRC. My lights are adjusted to the nighttime because I was doing my streaming at night yesterday. So sorry if it's a little bright. We have Jack in the building. Jack Levin. I don't know if I said his name wrong, but he has been all over the place. Talking. Here at Crypto in the Morning, we like to get a lot of our information from some of the guys that have been in the ecosystem for a lot longer. I don't like getting my information to people that have been in crypto for 2 years. Not very smart. Not very smart. It's just like, here's an interesting comparison. The Bitcoin Fear Greed Index that people send me all the time. That wasn't even invented when Bitcoin was at the low points where it was. So why would I even look at that as a gauge it's just, you have to look at people that have seen this through. And it's not just about crypto. It's about other industries. It's all the same shit. People build, people learn, people lie, people make money. And you can just, at people that have more experience working through a lot of this stuff, I love to have them on the show because I don't want to get wrecked for the rest of my life. That would be nice if I didn't have, I'm not rich. This is I got comfortable livings, of course, but I am 28 years old. I don't have a family. I got a lot of shit to do. I want to learn this crypto thing so I can deal with all that. All right. But anyway, guys, I'm super excited to ask a lot of questions today with Sam. Talk about the Twitter spaces that we streamed live here. Absolutely blew up. Like, we were just chilling. We streamed the Twitter spaces. It kind of blew up. Jack was in there being like the only reasonable guy in the room, per usual. Saying, oh, you should take profits, but at the same time, he is speculative and, bringing it all the way around where other people are like, NFTs are for idiots. You know what I mean? Like, Richard, come on, bro. Fucking lose that shit. Like, please. And it's not, just don't say it. Yeah, we know it's true, but I was trading RuneScape coins for NFTs when I was in 2012. So it's the same shit. This stuff's been happening. The only thing Richard always says is that this has been happening for a while. Anyway, I'm talking too much, guys. I'm getting a little excited. I always do this when I get a new guest on because I like to ask questions. We're going to go 1 minute and 9 seconds. Intro song, guys. Be back.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hex and I'm making a stay. Got me some hedge on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim ready sent me to show you the way.
D5 Pro.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
What is up, bro? How you doing? I'm
Good.
looking forward to the show with Jack today. I heard about him the first time the other day, and that in that Twitter space, and it was interesting because there was a lot of people who were there's a lot of smart, intelligent people in there, and Jack stood out. I like learning from other people who have different perspectives than me and just different points of view, who see things completely differently just because of the way that they have been on the journey of life, right?
Well, it's that
a
a lot of people have been through a nice individual journey, but some people lose the ability to tell things in an unbiased way, right? They lose the ability to have a perspective on their life, which gives them the ability to actually present the amazing things they've gone through, right? Imagine if I was so cold and so heartless just because, or whatever, like, for example, just because that was like, you got to step away from it, realize we're all humans, and some people do that better than others. And I really I'm getting too fucking talky today.
Well, let's take a deep breath.
I stayed up too late watching. I'm a gym rat, guys. I go to bed early, like an early bird. So I was staying up trying to be Mr. Stays up with the Joneses, listening to everyone last night. Never again. No, I'm just kidding, guys. Let's transition my boy Jack.
Hey guys,
Good morning. How are you?
morning. I'm good. You guys have like the best intro.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
it's like
appreciate
super,
that,
super
Jack. That's really
creative.
nice.
I like it. I like it. It has this like the coolness vibe to it, and with interesting charts floating. Pretty nice. I like it.
We have somebody in the background, Bullish, who is very helpful with that because it's not something that
We're just weightlifters, sir. We're just weightlifters.
we enjoy the gym, but he's very helpful.
But producer Bullish in the background, absolute shouts out to him. He is amazing. Helps us every day.
Thank you for
Nice.
taking the time to come on. I would love to hear your story, like, and just your perspective on crypto, or like, what was your story? I know you and your Twitter
Well,
profile.
as far as I know, you weren't from around as a youngster. You're from overseas, right?
Yeah.
So like you transitioned to overseas and then you became a part of Google. That's what a lot of people know you for. I think that's at least what it's kind of like your little stick on Twitter, at least. Like people see you and the Google thing is a good. So how did you get from being a part, not speaking English? I only know that because you told me that yesterday. I mean, you were speaking on that on your interview. You did not speak English. You came over here and at 23 years old, you end up working for Google and getting all involved and pulling the wires and everything. How does that, what does that look like? Can you bring us back a little bit?
Sure. So I came when I was 15. So my parents kind of like they put me on the suitcase and rolled me into the airport and said, "Hey, we're going to America." I'm like, that's great. New experiences, new people, should be fun. So, and I did try to learn English like way before, like, I would say from 12 to 15. But then when I came to the States, I'm like, okay, my English is not the English that people understand. We moved
But
to.
that's hard. I want to know emotion. We get a little emotional. I had kind of a feathered past in my youth, so like we get into the emotions of that. What did that feel like as somebody that was? I mean, maybe it wasn't a big deal to you. Maybe that was just how stuff was. But you were getting into a whole. You had no friends, I assume. You had no peoples that you knew when you moved. So,
and you can't communicate with anybody because you
how
speak
was
a different
that
language.
emotionally? Was that distressful, or is that something you just realized you had to work through slowly?
So the good news is that I lived. We got like into an apartment complex, and we paid I think $200 a month, if I remember. It had no air conditioning, and we're in the state of Missouri, St. Louis. It was very hot.
Yeah.
It was very hot, and that was the first shocker, right? But the good thing is that apparently that apartment complex had like a bunch of Russians living there. So they all knew each other, and we had like this really little community going where people could like help each other out. So that was a good on ramp to move to the States. And within literally 2 weeks, they just put me in school, and I was so surprised by American education system. The first thing that was like really incredible is how nice people were. Just very, very nice, nice kids, and the teachers were totally understanding. They put me in an English class, right? And they were doing their English things, and they gave me uh, like a little booklet for retards, I think, which
Hey, I was in the same. Hey, I was from the States and I was in that same class. So
Yeah.
I was actually born in Maryland, went to school in Maryland, and was in the classes with the kids that couldn't function properly.
So my first class is that they're like all discussing literature and all kinds of like things that I have no idea what they're talking about. But what I have is fill in the blank, where the blank is I am, and you need to put am after I, right? Or I was. And so just like all the verbs and all the tenses. And so I filled it all out and I gave it back to them, and they're like, "Oh, you can write." I'm like, "Yeah, I just can't speak." So,
Real quick shout out to the chat. Thank you so much for everyone being here. I'm not on super show host mode today because I do really want to listen. And again, I did stay up really late last night. And for anyone who watches this show, they know I don't do that. So I just woke up late. That was the only difference. I'm reading them all, guys. Everyone's really excited for Jack being here. I'm going to drop the tweet below, guys. Dropping the tweet below. Give it a retweet while we're going. Biceps in the chat for Jack. Yeah, we're gonna get Jack to throw up a bicep. Yes,
Can we
we
get-
will.
You want to get a flex on?
Yeah, we'll get it at the end. We'll get a little screen share with the flex going. Thank you so much, guys. Share that out, Jack. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, no problem.
You were originally from Russia?
Yeah. So St. Petersburg, Russia, the kind of like the real Russia.
Okay. And then you come over here and you start to integrate into this community who has other people from Russia, which probably made it a lot easier because you have people to connect with, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So really had great time in high school. So spent about two and a half years or so. Went to the University of Missouri in the state of Missouri, University of Missouri, Columbia. And then in 1995, I was working 3 jobs, and my car was always breaking. Like I was literally just, dumping dollars into my car just being broken. Like the engine broke.
What was the feel? What did you feel? I mean, I want you to know, like, I was at a job 100 days ago that I quit to pursue crypto full time just because I'm a crazy person. But I was making a lot of money. I was spending a lot of money. I have a house, I have some things. I also have renters and very low overhead, guys. So, I have very low overhead. But I'm going through a similar situation right now. I just bought a 96 Honda stick shift for $4,000 cash, baby. And it's smooth as butter, by the way. Smooth. But anyway, I'm going through this situation. So I want you to talk a little bit about how are you feeling? Were you invigorated in the moment? Because I don't care about that. I mean, yes, I need to pay my bills and shit for sure. But I feel more excited than ever. But again, we're in totally different positions. What was your emotional feelings back then? Were you in distress? Was this a very scary situation for you? Or were you like young and reckless, free kind of vibes?
So what I was feeling is that there isn't ever enough money to do anything, and I better start thinking how to make money fast, or how to make some money so that at least my car is not always in the shop. Maybe I can get a car that's like not a crappy car, but like maybe a Japanese car, because I was driving an Oldsmobile Delta 88. I think it was 1986.
I'm looking that model up.
So 1986 old Delta 88. And that thing was horrible. I mean,
my god, dude! Do you have pictures of any of this shit in your like family pictures and shit?
I do.
Dude, you have to publish some of this. This is freebie, like awesome content that's like actually heartwarming. Like this car is incredible. I can see you cruising down the street in this right now. I can pull it up.
So it had a couch for the back seat.
My man was getting it.
Yeah, and it had a couch for the front seat too.
Was this the situation you were dealing with right here?
That's the situation, and that was the weather, actually.
Look at that. That's clean, baby. That's nice, baby.
That's the color. That's the one. That's it. The gray one.
They were all like gray or beige, weren't they back then?
Hey,
I don't remember, but it had a pretty good engine when it was working. It was a cruiser. It's like a Harley of a car, type of thing.
So you realize that like, oh, this shit's breaking down all the time. I don't feel like I'm making enough money to, get this thing fixed all the time, or just like, hey, I just made this money, but then I got to put this back into the car to get it fixed. Now I'm out of all this money. And so you're going through that. How did you end up in California and working for Google?
Yeah. So in 1995, I started trading on the stock market. So I was buying things like Dell and Intel, and I was trading options. So I was pretty early, as a person in the stock market, and I tried to understand like what the hell is going on with the stock market. And actually, 1995 to 1999, that was a huge bull run. Like the market was like tripling. So I was learning more about it, and I started talking to people about trading in the stock market and everything. And then I met a friend who said like, hey, you may just end up losing all your money, but you really need to be thinking about stock options as a incentive in a company, where the company gives you the stock options or warrants, And then when the company goes public, you actually will make it big with the company. And that should be the way to think about it. And I didn't know that was a thing. Like I heard it on the radio. That was like before internet. So people were talking about stock options, and like Monsanto was a big company, like big biotech in Missouri. So they were talking about like stock option plans, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And so this friend, he said like, yeah, everything happens in California, and you should really look into it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should find me one of those companies with stock options. and when I graduated in '97, I just posted my resume like everywhere. Like the web became a thing, and I started to receive calls from recruiters saying, hey, come out to California and just like get into
What did you get your degree in?
computer science.
Okay. And then you start getting these calls, hey, come on out to California. And that was in the same period of time where your buddy was like, hey, everything's happening in California, including stock options for companies, everything like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I came to California and I did a couple of interviews. So and I got started in one of the startups that didn't make it after a year. So I was working in this company, and when I first came to California, I was driving on Middlefield Road. I'm like, wow, Netscape, wow, Intel, they're across from each other. Wow, Microsoft, and this and that. So I figured, I guess everybody's like really in Mountain View, in Sunnyvale. That's the place to be.
Real quick, Jay-Z hexing, Hexicans, we're witnessing viral history in the making. These are incredible times, and we are so blessed to be within the Richard Hart ecosystem. I'll see you in Vegas. Hey, I'll be in Vegas too at the golf tournament, guys. Maybe we can get Jack. Jack, you golf?
I can swing. I don't know if it's going to go in the right direction though.
Well, I'm the camera guy, so I don't. But anyway, thank you so much for the $55 super chat, Jay-Z. We are all excited for the Vegas golf tournament, crypto Pulse Chain sponsored golf tournament.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So when my company didn't make it, the guys at the company, they said, hey, this is actually a good thing, because the quicker they fail, the better you can move on, in life into a new thing. And by then, I actually thought that I missed the whole internet thing. So it was 1997, and I'm like, okay, it's too late. The market's all-time high. I'm not gonna make any money. It's just too late. And I figured I don't want to work for any companies anymore, because they can fail at any time. I'm just going to become a consultant. So I got into cryptography, security, and basically design of the cryptographic systems to protect companies' intellectual properties, and that literally paid for my college. So I was $30,000 or $40,000 in debt, and within so like that first startup didn't pay me anything. I mean, it paid me just barely to live. And I figured, okay, it's a startup. That's it is what it is. But when I became a consultant, I started to make up to $200 an hour, and I worked 8 to 10 hour days every day, even weekends. Because
and this was also back when the dollar was way more valuable than this today.
That sounds like roughly like a $200,000 gig nowadays, like that, or like maybe $100,000, $150,000 gig nowadays. Because I know most of my friends are making $86,000 to $100,000 a year, and they're all going under, like right now.
Yeah, so back then the homes in California were worth like $300,000.
Oh my god!
Which you couldn't.
You can't even buy a plank of wood down there for $300,000 now.
Or even nothing. Can't even buy a dumpster.
No, seriously. Because there's space in that dumpster, and it costs more than $300,000 underneath of it.
Yeah, so all of a sudden I was making all that money, and the cash was coming in. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. This is the way. This is the way. Absolutely, is the way. I paid off my college like within 3 months. I paid off my credit card debt.
I probably felt amazing.
It was incredible, and then so I did that for, I would say, about a year, and within that year, between 1998 and 99, I just continued to hang out with people and getting together with other interesting technologists, and so my wife and I, we were in a rollerblading club in Stanford, and every Wednesday we would put our rollerblades and we would go rollerblading. And
That's
and we
awesome, by
also
the way.
really liked Stanford Bookstore because it had the books that would not necessarily be sold like on the street.
They had the alpha back then. That was where the alpha.
Exactly. So it was like the professors that studied or worked in Stanford actually were the authors of those books. So it was very interesting to be there. And one day I'm rollerblading and I see there's a job fair happening. And Sergey Brin from Google is advertising or presenting google.com. And so I rollerblade in and I see that this guy is Russian. So I tried to talk Russian to him, and he barely speaks Russian at the time because he came to the country when he was like 3 years old. And so as I talked to him, he's like, yeah, we have 7 people at the company and we're hiring, we're from Stanford and we're building this thing out. We're going to be the best search engine on the planet. And I'm like, best search engine. There's like eight others out there.
Oh my god!
And was this when Yahoo was far bigger than Google?
Oh yeah.
And
It was
Ask Jeeves and all that.
So GRC was what my dad calls a whisper in his eye at this point. My dad's like, you were still a whisper in my eye. I was not born yet, but this was all the stuff that was getting outdated as I started to learn about tech just even a little bit, like Pokemon and stuff. Like I heard about Ask Jeeves. I heard about but YouTube was like right when YouTube was the poppin'. When I was a kid, you went on YouTube and you could find whatever you want. So that was just right as early as I was. I was on RuneScape looking up tutorial videos when I was 9 years old. So it's interesting to see.
Real quick for anybody, Jack, who is not sure who Sergey is, can you tell people? Because I have a feeling like I know who he is, you know who he is, but GRC doesn't. And probably there's a bunch of people who are watching who don't know who that is. So who is Sergey? But he's also pitching Google. And then
Right. So Sergey was the president of Google. He was one of the co-founders. And Larry Page was his partner. Wow. So Larry Page was also in Stanford, and they literally designed Google from the grounds up. It was their university project, and their professors, they told him, "Hey, you should start a company because this thing's going to be amazing, or it may, really work." And so I didn't tell Sergey anything at the time because I just didn't think it would. Google was very exciting as a product, just simply because there were so many other products that were doing the search. But I went home and I checked it out, and I was so impressed by the quality and the speed of the search engine and how it didn't have any ads. And the ads were like coming out from everywhere back then. You couldn't even,
the pop-ups.
It's just like crypto. It's just like crypto projects now. There's a new crypto project every day.
Exactly. Right. So you could think of clicking, and before you could even think or open your computer, would be full of ads. And Google was like the one thing that was precise, on point, like a search scalpel. You could just find anything. And as soon as I figured that this is an amazing product and they only have 10 people at a time, I thought, okay, I'm changing my mind about this not working for a company thing. I'm going to call them up right now. So I called them up, and they're like, oh yeah, come over, and we'll interview. So I came over, and Larry Page and Sergey, they interviewed me, and we really hit it off because we talked about Linux, and I played with Linux when it was first released, and the version was like 0.83b. I was installing Linux on my PC from floppies. So I knew open source in and out, and I was one of those like early open source proponents.
Early. I mean, we're talking. That was
GRC. Do you know what a floppy is?
Well, the only reason I do is because yesterday. Well, I know what a floppy is, kind of like it was the way they stored stuff back then. But then you said you brought something that was better to somebody. I can't remember the specific verbiage, of course, but like you said, I brought something smaller, and everyone was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did that come about? And explain that to Sam a little bit because I don't remember the words you were using.
So I wanted to be impressive, right? You always want to be impressive at an interview because you want to get in, right? So
Yeah.
so I had a company, and the word company was just like really what I would tell people what it is. It was just me, right? But the company was registered, and I was designing hardware PC-based systems that ran Linux on the chip. So it's basically, imagine a USB built in on the motherboard. So it's non-removable. You just plug it in onto the motherboard, and everything just boots up from the chip. Yeah, that's the floppy.
I remember those.
I remember my dad and brother had a stack of these, and I never knew what they were for, but there was a big stack in the computer room of these, and I had not a clue back then what they were for. I would just watch my dad play Doom. He would play Doom on the computer, Doom 3 or Doom whatever, and these floppies had something to do with something, and I don't know, but it's interesting. I never played with these ever. Never once have I had
somebody should launch an Etsy shop with coasters that are designed as floppies. And
I'm sure it's done already. I'm sure it's
I'm gonna sell floppies with Jack's picture in his old car.
Right.
His old car that'll be like printed on it, and I'll be like, bring it back somehow, $1 a piece, baby.
You know, that car made me feel old.
That car is awesome, bro. That car is awesome.
Old as in, because right now we might like to feel younger, right? But at the time, by having that car, was it like make you feel older as in like more mature, or where now you're like, hey, cool, it'd be nice to feel 10 years younger? Where were you in the mindset?
It was old in a bad way. Like my life is ending.
Okay. Okay, so you want to impress the guys, right? You're going in for the interview, and you take this kind of like a thumb drive and you attach it to the motherboard.
I brought the whole system. So I brought a black box, and I said, here's my black box. It runs open source software. It runs Linux. It boots up from a chip, and they never seen anything like this. It was a new thing, and I guess it was quite impressive because they gave me an offer like even before I left the building.
Wow.
So they're like, okay, he's our guy. We should get him on. So I started literally within days. And
do you before you get into the experience at Google, did you feel like you had an advantage? Because as a consultant, right, like if I work for ABC Company, I understand ABC Company intimately, but in an area, say where there's crypto or tech back in the day, that is evolving like very, 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 very quickly. When you're a consultant, you probably deal with 5, 10, 20, depending on the type of consultant you are. You deal with a bunch of different companies, which means that you get to feed yourself like new information perpetually from these different companies, and you get like a broader perspective of like what's happening than if you're just focusing on ABC. Do you feel like you got an advantage that way?
I think so, because my job at Google was to do what nobody else could do. And when I came the first week, and I'm talking to Larry Page, and I asked him, okay, what do you guys want me to do? And they said, so we have a search engine. It goes down quite often. Let's make sure it doesn't go down and it remains fast. And I'm like, okay, so it's
at the time, were you clueless about that in particular, or did you have decent insight, or were you just like, I'm gonna figure this out because I can figure stuff out?
So I was 23.
Yeah,
and
very young.
I was 23, but again, as Sam mentioned, my advantage was that I dealt with problems for the last like 3 years prior, all kinds of problems. Things were burning. People had no idea what the heck they were doing, right? And to them, I looked like an expert.
Well, is it fair to say that you were actually like sometimes when people move up in those companies, they become less involved and they miss the nuance. Like there's a lot of nuance there, and they were like, this kid's young, he needs money, probably, right? Like he wants to have a career, and he's figuring stuff out on the feet. So they were like hedging on you a little bit to like keep going.
Well, my presentation is that I am just very outgoing, a little bit crazy, and I like playing with new things and think outside the box. But I think the biggest thing was like Linux. So they didn't have anybody who really understood how Linux worked and how to make it better in their environment. And by the way, running Linux, which is open source operating system for the internet today, but back then no one been doing it, right? It had a lot of bugs and a lot of problems, and Google was gambling on running an open source operating system that they wouldn't pay for, and they were betting their whole company on it, right? Where everybody else, they were buying Sun Microsystems, and investors would actually would want people to spend money on equipment so that they have full support. So what happened with me is that I was the support, and they didn't have to pay for Linux to run it.
Oh, so this is almost like a vertical integration of some sort, where like if somebody has a manufacturing company, maybe or somebody sells products, now they start manufacturing, and then maybe they go like a step further and be like, okay, we're gonna bring in to start doing the raw material ourselves because it's right in our backyard or something like that. But that's in the tech space is what they were doing. Everybody else is buying the system so they can get the support from Sun. Go ahead.
Yeah. So a lot of companies in the tech space back then in 97, they had the tech monopolies. So Sun Microsystems was the Unix of the day, right? If you wanted to build servers, you would run your stuff on Sun Microsystems. If you run networking gear, it would be Cisco, this and that, right? So Google was very different, and that was very attractive to me, where they thought that they could swing it by not paying anything to anybody. And they would take that risk and build a company on an open source operating system. And that was ultimately like a huge driver for me in terms of being excited and working in those large systems. So, but the first day or first week at Google, we didn't even have chairs. We had the rubber balls that we would sit on, and the room, it was actually maybe 4 small offices. It was an office in I think it was 165 University Avenue in Palo Alto, above an ice cream shop, and people were like running across a hallway, dive into a bunch of rubber balls, like the medicine balls, like you
Yeah.
So the people were flying, and I'm like, this is great. I never seen a company like that, because they're all going bonkers. They're bouncing off the walls, those people, right? So, and it makes a person feel like, okay, you can definitely fit in, and even if you screw up, nobody's gonna yell at you. So, and yet they raised a lot of money. They raised $30 million from Sequoia and Kleiner Perkins, which was like the big VC firms. So after Larry Page told me what to do, and it was a very, very general statement, I don't think he actually knew what I could do, or what. I mean, he knew, like, okay, stuff's going down is bad, stuff staying up is good. So let's keep it in the good zone.
I don't know how to do that, but you sound like you should figure that out better than I could. So have at it.
And I said, okay, that sounds good. I'm gonna go to the data center and I will investigate. And then Larry says, oh, by the way, tomorrow you're getting a shipment delivery of 2,000 servers. You should install them. And I'm like, okay, 2,000 servers. Let's see what happens. So I go next day to the data center. A huge truck pulls to the back of the data center, unloads the racks on wheels, and they roll them into a cage, into a data center cage. And now I need to figure out what to do with them. And Larry then says, and by the way, we really should step on it, because in 3 days we have Netscape.com connecting to our search engine. We're going to quadruple our traffic. If we don't bring them online now, we're not going to make it. And I thought, all right, time to get inventive. So I installed a system that auto installs all the servers. So when you turn them on, they just install from a single server and boot themselves up and install Linux. And the first problem I ran into, there were so many of them, I had to have like 5 of those installer servers because I was running out of network bandwidth to do that. But within a day, I spent like 18 hours in the data center, and I was like wearing earplugs, and it was tough. But I got them all installed, and I gave them to the engineering team, and they started to use them, and they brought them up online. And 3 days later, we had a Netscape party. So Netscape went online. We started getting search from their portal, and that was like the big win. So, and I guess they thought, okay, this guy is a keeper because he took the 2,000 servers, plugged them in, installed them, and everything seems to be working. So that was the first achievement in summer of 1999.
Was the metric that you guys used to gauge kind of growth, searches per day, per hour type of thing? And was that metric just like every couple hours increasing, or was it like yesterday we had 700,000 searches, today we have 800,000, tomorrow, you know what I mean? How quickly was that metric growing?
It was growing pretty quick. I mean, when Netscape came online, everything just like quadrupled or something like that. But we were looking at metrics like how quick the searches are, because they needed to remain under half a second, as well as how many QPS or queries per second we're actually getting. So that was super, super exciting, and I felt very accomplished that I've done that. I have installed the first like mega delivery of servers. And by the way, those servers, they didn't look like servers at all. If you look at my tweet, where I show the server rack that's now in the Computer History Museum, that's the rack I installed.
I can find that one.
It's a JJ rack, right? And the JJ rack, I ran out of alphabet letters, so I had to double the letters. So it was A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. Then I'm like, okay, time to double AA, BB, CC. That was JJ1, and now it's in the Computer History Museum, which is pretty awesome. So all of the spaghetti cables that you see on that server, that's all my doing.
Okay, so this is fascinating. I appreciate you sharing and giving all this context for people like us, and probably most of the people who are watching who have no idea about the context of like what was taking place back in those days. Because I was barely using the internet back then, or had no idea how to use it. But I used Yahoo, and then I switched to Google at some point. But what you had mentioned briefly several moments ago, that you were into cryptography and that kind of thing. How can you kind of transition us how you went from being at Google to getting into crypto, and what that was like, or what was happening along that journey?
So that was a decade later.
And at the end, real quick, at the end, we're gonna pick your brain and have a little open conversation about some of the longevity stuff that you've talked about, because that's something that me and Sam look into very heavily in
Absolutely.
our personal time over the last 10 years. That's pretty much 50% of my studies have been towards how to become a more efficient human from the inside, right? Like for me, it's not about staying alive, obviously, at this point, long term. It's just about being effective every single day, because I came from a state where I was not effective any days. So so I've been learning and about nutrition, obviously, staying lean, like you talked about autophagy, or however you say that word. A lot of the fasting stuff, that's been huge for me. I don't eat until roughly 5 p.m., 4 p.m. every single day. And that's just the way that I like to do it. But we can talk about that more at the end. Obviously, I want to talk about like when you saw Bitcoin coming up.
Oh,
my God, this is incredible.
Right, so you can find it on my Twitter stream.
How do you switch this to his?
Yeah, so it's on my Twitter stream. I think Richard actually replied to it.
I can do it.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
No,
We should talk about autophagy. Autophagy is awesome. But anyhow, so crypto transition. So I left Google in 2005 because it became too big, and I wanted to, have.
What did that, just real quick, highlight that? Like when you left, were you in a very happy place? Were you in a place where you're like had no more creative juices and you wanted more? or because you probably had more money at this point, so you were more focused on maybe some other kind of focus.
Fulfillment.
So the money didn't really wasn't the deciding factor, because the IPO happened in 04 and I stayed in the company until 05 just because I liked it. But what I discovered is that the intensity of work from 99 to like 03 or 04 was very motivating, and I felt like I'm making an impact. And as we scaled the people and the systems, it just became obvious that this, I felt like I wasn't in retirement even while I was at work. So, and I thought that's really not great for the mindset to feel like you're in retirement.
Exactly, the mindset.
Because you weren't doing important, challenging, impactful things.
It sounds like it became more centralized and you had no more impact. Like it became too big, it became too centralized, and then your role within the company, it was probably organically just occurred, right? Like there was younger guys doing other stuff and you slowly were in a different role, and then you slowly realized that your creative juices would not be accelerated at this rate.
Well, I would say the intensity of work wasn't there. Things were not breaking as much.
So you want intensity. You want
absolutely. I wanted things to.
That's different from most people. You gotta remember, like that. I like that too, but like that's a good way to think. Like I want more intensity in my work too, but I think a lot of people hide from that as well.
I wanted to be challenged, and I didn't feel like I was challenged.
Yes.
So in 05, I just made the decision to leave the company and to do something else with my life. And I started imagehack.com with my brother at the time. And it literally became an overnight success, because the way that we have done it is it was all ad driven, but the ads that we were using, they were Google ads. So they were not like the pop-ups that people would hate. And those ads were making a lot of money for us. Within the first year of the launch, the biggest problem we had was scaling, but it wasn't really a problem because I'm like, okay, I'm back. I can scale this stuff. I can get it online and make it work. And so within that first year, I launched 4 data centers nationwide, just running imagehack.com. And we became, by the measure of Alexa.com, which measures websites in terms of its
ranking and
usability and
traffic and stuff,
we were number 11 in the world.
Wow.
So back then, number 11 in rank.
And we still look at Google Analytics every single day on this show, by the way. Like we still, to this day, like when there's two things to compare, we just go to the Google click rate, just to the first thing through to see which one's clicked more. It's incredible that, it's just incredible that you were involved in this so early and it's still here. Like, wow.
Yeah.
In a world of everything gone, Blockbuster, everything, and then now we're dealing in software, right? And it kind of changes the game because it has more scalability and more flexibility. It's able to, and a lot of people screw up on it, of course. But, and then we get more into decentralized currency where we're at now. And what I've been learning is it seems like it's just basically cutting all the fat. It's just making finance more effective and more efficient at this moment because it's going through software rather than the hands of 100 humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward to 2010, running imagehack.com, got involved with Twitter, was powering Twitter images. So like the Twitter images that you're posting today, that was our early technology. So we were there before Twitter even had a website or mobile apps.
Wow.
So we were the first mobile solution for posting images to Twitter. And that was imagehack.com backend.
So you couldn't go to Twitter and post a picture like, well, we didn't really, have this kind of thing. So you could take pictures and just post them. It was like, hey, let me go to ImageHack, find a photo that kind of represents what I might try to get across. And I would post the photo from ImageHack.
Yes and no. So what happened is that when Twitter came out, they had just the API. They had the ecosystem that they were trying to develop so that people would build mobile apps for Twitter. So the mobile apps were there, but they didn't have the capacity to take pictures and send pictures to Twitter and post them on the timeline because there was nowhere to host them. There was no servers. So we approached every mobile application provider for Twitter, and we said we will pay you if you put the ImageX API for image hosting. And those guys, they were just guys like us. They were not making any money anywhere, and they're like, holy crap, this is a company who will pay us to actually make our service better.
So how did that work from a business standpoint? So where are you getting revenue as the business?
Okay, so let's go through the steps. So what happened is that overnight, all of the mobile apps on iPhone and Android turned on imagecheck.com for image hosting for Twitter. And whenever the users would post those images from their phones across our API to Twitter, we would have the backlinks from the thumbnails go back to our site. So when a person on Twitter clicks on a picture to see a larger picture, it would go back to the site, and we would monetize it with the ads.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we would also retrieve the tweet and put the tweet next to the picture. So we're like a platform for a bigger image display. So that was the business model.
Thank you so much, Dennis Caliberda, for the 20 euro super chat. Jack is a legend. Insane high quality content happening in the bear market. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah. So I got involved with the Twitter pretty early too, and I knew the Twitter founders. I knew Evan Williams and Bistone, and Jack Dorsey was this young weird dude. I met him in the hallway at Twitter, and I figured mobile is definitely a thing. We were actually making more money on mobile Twitter plugin that we developed than we were making at ImageCheck at the time. So that was huge success. Also, just like getting into a Twitter as an infrastructure provider. Moving forward, couple of years, we had this Google dinners and Google launches for people who were ex-Googlers, and we just wanted to hang out and talk about stuff. So I went to meet up with my buddies and my old team, and we're sitting and we're having beers and having lunch. And one of the guys says, "Hey, there was like some sort of a inside joke happening, and the guy was dissing Bitcoin. He said, hey, they should pay with Bitcoin. That thing is like so illegal and so shady, darknet, this and that, blah, blah, blah." And that was like 2010. And I'm like, Bitcoin, what's that? And I went back online, checked it out. And because I ran a number of data centers, I would always overbuy my power. So the power to power my servers, I had plenty of that. And it was just sitting there being wasted because you would pay for it in advance, but you wouldn't use it because you just don't know how many servers you would need. But you need to buy them ahead of time because power is the commodity that's somewhat scarce, right? And within the 3 months after I learned about Bitcoin, I turned on about 120 servers with 3 NVIDIA cards in each. And I started mining Bitcoin.
Oh my goodness.
And I figured this is going to pay as an arbitrage for my data center bills for the power that I'm not using. I'm just going to use it and I will convert it to Bitcoin. And then
lower your power cost.
Yeah. And so at the time, Bitcoin was trading between $1 and $3. And I started learning more about it, and I understood how ingenious and world-altering the technology could be.
How did you find that out? Like, how did you cut through the noise and realize like what was actually going on? Did you just look at it specifically in detailed way and see that this was a ledger that could be used for other things, or were you like, Bitcoin is the shit? Did you think the technology was cool, or did you think like this Bitcoin in particular is really cool? or were you just kind of trying to keep up with?
He's probably just trying to save money because he's like, fuck, I have this business and I have to pay X for my electricity.
I always forget.
If I can drop this shit down by 20%, 30%, 40%, I'm gonna fucking do that shit. I don't know where you were at, but that's how I would think about it.
You're definitely right, Sam. It was a business decision first and foremost. But then as I learned more about it, I recognized how amazing the self-custody is. And I understood cryptography because I come from the cryptography world, where the private keys are there to unlock your wallet, and anybody can send you money to your public key. And to me, it was like a walk in the park. I understood how everything worked. The most interesting part was the peer-to-peer, right? Peer-to-peer, and I was huge on torrent back then. I loved free movies, and torrent was peer-to-peer, and I'm like,
that was alpha back then too. That was alpha. Like having free videos back then. Nowadays everyone has it, but back then, if someone could pull up a free video on a thing and play it, like that was the good stuff.
So the way that my mind understood is that back then, free movies was the commodity you wanted to own. And here you had a Bitcoin that was a commodity that actually stored the actual value. And it also peer-to-peer and trustless and has self-custody. So I thought it's just basically answering so many things that the world potentially would need. And so I really liked it, and I just continued to mine it for a couple of years. And then I kind of got busy with the company, and so I it was working, and I forgot about it. And then I just came back to like the project and looked at the wall, and I had people working on it. So people were managing, making sure the data center is not overheating. Like we had giant fans just pointing to the racks of servers because things were overheating all the time, and chips were melting. They were melting of the video cards. It was that intense of a mining operation. And so in 2013. I sold some of the Bitcoin, but my thing is that I wanted to introduce Bitcoin to the rest of my friends. So every time I would go to lunch, I would help them to install a wallet on their phone, and then I would just give them like 10 Bitcoins, like every time. Anybody who goes to lunch with me, I would give them free Bitcoin, just because I felt like I want to.
More people need to use this.
Yeah. So so funny. A couple of weeks ago, I met a friend. He said, "Hey, remember those 10 Bitcoins you gave me?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I sold them when it was $50,000 a coin. I just bought myself a house with that money."
Oh, awesome.
So thank you for being a good friend and getting me on board early.
I'm hoping all my friends that have Hex and Bitcoin and Ethereum that I've helped over the last couple of I hope it turns around, because I had to stop onboarding people. I never onboard people like super directly, pretty indirectly, but people were onboarding at dollar amounts that were really high, and I learned that I'm just going to be crypto more as an ethos and less as a shill, because it's like if you shill someone something and they lose a bunch of money, they're just going to hate you, and then they're going to sell it, and then in 5 years when you're rich anyway, they're going to be pissed.
So you're mining for 3 years and just acquiring during, like, say it sounded like 2010 to 2013 is maybe you sold some of that off, and then
did you figure out the market cycles? Did you figure it out? Like, did you figure out at what point were you like, okay, there's going to be a huge gain on this and potentially huge downside? Like, I don't know what your insight on the market was. You seemed like you were in the tech, but maybe not like stared at the charts yet. I don't know. What did you see at the time? Did you see opportunity to make huge gains and then sell a little portion or a large portion, or were you kind of just riding it out, figuring it out as you went?
Frankly, I had no idea, and that is not what I was thinking. I was just thinking, while it has value, it's paying for my data center bills. That's it. And in terms of any sort of world-changing technology, I thought it could happen, but there were too many unknown variables. So I really had no idea what could have been. And then Litecoin came out, and I'm like, oh, Litecoin's cool. It's kind of like silver to Bitcoin gold. And we started mining Litecoin because it felt bigger in your mind because you can mine like 50 Litecoins daily or something like that. And then in 2017, Litecoin just exploded. And then I really started to pay even more attention to the space.
Okay. So question on that. Okay. So you're getting this Litecoin, you're getting 50 per day per server kind of thing. And you're not selling this.
No.
And you're just acquiring. And then in 2017, it's a 10x or 100x or something like that. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. I'm making more money in crypto gains than I am in my
the time
business.
value prop. You start to get in that time value prop area where I was when I left my job. I was like, this shit just went up 26x in 3 months. I'm making this many dollars per hour. Maybe I should focus more on this. That's kind of how I went about it. But sorry.
That was my thinking. And at the same time, it still felt a little bit like a scam and it can go away at any moment.
Yeah, back then.
So,
oh yes. So, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that was the thought process.
How did you get to the point? Okay, let's get to something a little bit more directed towards our audience in particular. When did you get to the point where you actually learned about Hex? Like, when did you notice Hex as a thing? Like, you noticed it. When was the first part? Like, when is the first ad or person that pitched it to you that you ever seen or like ran into?
Okay, so I'm back on Twitter, right? And I'm looking through crypto space.
How long ago was your Twitter start?
That was like 4 months ago, maybe.
Okay, cool.
So I'm back on Twitter, and I'm starting to see Pulse Chain. And again, me coming from the technology background, I really wanted to figure out what are those blockchains are all about. So I know how Cardano works. I know how Polkadot works. The difference between Ethereum and the economics there versus Bitcoin. And I'm like, wait, Pulse Chain. Let's see what that is. And I pinged my my cousin, who is also in the crypto space, and he runs a popcorn network. And he's like, oh yeah, so Pulse, that's Hex, guys. And I'm like, okay, Hex, what is that? So I looked through Hex online, and I was inundated by reviews of how scammy that whole thing is. And I text back my cousin. I'm like, isn't it a scam thing that everybody's talking about? They're like, yeah, but they're honest scammers. I'm like, honest scammers? How does that work? That you're telling people you're going to scam them in an honest way? But I actually misunderstood. And then literally a week later, I get a postcard. And so that postcard, the 38% APR. I'm like, okay, USPS sending me Hex. That's my confirmation. It's for sure is a scam, because I have never got any crypto onboarding material ever in my life. It's somehow those two things just coincided, where I learned about Pulse, I learned about Hex, and I got the postcard.
Wow. I had to say, I'm sorry. This is like, I just got into crypto. Like, I first touched on in 2013, got my first Bitcoin, lost it. The exchange, I left it on exchange. They stole the money. It was keep coming up in my peripheral, like year after year after year. But 100 days ago, maybe 120 days ago, I really was like, okay, Tesla, I had been investing in Tesla and whatnot. And I was like, time to switch. This is the next thing that's really going to take off, like Tesla did. And I switched over here. After about 5 days, GRC has a buddy who's just traveling the country talking about crypto. And I live in Florida, and I'm like, hey, I just send him a picture, and I'm like, hey, I just saw your buddy with his car like 7 minutes from my fucking house. And it sounds like a coincidence, because you were like learning about Hex.
It was like the second time we streamed. Like, it was the second time we streamed, and I was on here like explaining to him some just random T-share or whatever we were talking about at the time. And he went over to the beach or whatever that next day and actually ran into the Pulse Chain and the Hex cars that drive around.
Your story is like so familiar to like, it just was like within 2 or 3 days, right? You're learning about it, then you get this postcard. You're like, oh, this is definitely a scam. But sorry, go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah. I still was open-minded about it. So I just wanted to see what does YouTube, says about Hex, right? So I type Hex in YouTube, and I virtually meet Richard. and he's rotating Rolexes and all that, shebang. I'm like, okay, the guy does look like a scammer. But then I thought, why would the scammer look like a scammer? Wouldn't the scammer try to appear legit, like the rest of the scammers?
Yes.
Like Alex Mashinsky.
Yeah, exactly. Though I don't think he's a true scammer. I think the rabbit hole goes deeper than him being a scammer.
I know it does, but some of the unbank yourself stuff is stuck in my mind forever, bro. Like him
Yeah.
screaming "unbank yourself" to everyone, and Richard being like, "Bro," like telling us, like specifically, like we're very locked in on this community. Like, guys, like if you don't have big bags, like don't fucking do that shit. Like, don't do that shit. And he was being serious with us as younger guys. Like, he was like, I've seen this before, guys, and it touched me as someone who would have done all of that stuff if I came into crypto 100%. I came into crypto from 3K Bitcoin, had no idea what it was, wrote it up to 57K, started reading Richard Hart's book, sold all my Bitcoin immediately for Hex at 2 cents last year. And and I just started researching like I've been on a researching tear for like a year and a half straight. And in this day and age, that's all you really need to do is just research really hard and have an open mind. But I forgot what we were talking about. Sorry.
Well, so you get this postcard. You're like, this is weird. You start looking into it on YouTube, and you're like, he does look like a big scammer. That's kind of weird because if he is a scammer, why doesn't he fucking like try to act like a normal dude? And then that's where we left off. And please,
Yeah. And so I thought, okay, this is where the honesty comes, right? Being an honest scammer. But then I thought something still doesn't compute. So I turned on the sound, and Richard is talking about self-custody and blockchain and the rest of the things in the centralized exchanges, how things work and how things don't. And I'm like, this is very intelligent conversation. And the person he was talking to had no idea what he was talking about. And I thought, so Richard is spending his time and energy to explain things that he knows that other dude does not understand.
You had enough social insight. That's where I always talk about social insight. Having worked with people, I was a salesman. I knew exactly what he was throwing down the second I saw him. It took me 1 second because I had done that. I just seen 1.5 million different sales pitches. And I knew what somebody not getting paid to do something looks like.
Right.
I worked with super rich people they were my clients. I would just do work for them, and they had the same incentive structure. Some of them that own their own businesses, they didn't have anyone paying them to speak. They had nobody was paying Richard. I couldn't figure out how to send money to Richard if I tried. Like there's no way. So I realized this dude's not, everyone else has these big lists under them about all this stuff they want you to buy all this stuff to support me. Richard never asked for $1. I immediately knew it just clicked for me. I was like, he's spitting the truth because he wants to, I guess. Like that's part of his ethos. And you guys were kind of
sometimes we get excited and we interrupt you. Sorry.
I
did the same thing. But go ahead.
Yeah. So that was the moment where I thought, okay, it's just a game he's playing to get people to hate on him so that he can destroy them. And it was obvious. And it was obvious that he knew what he was talking about because I've been in the industry, in the space long enough to understand what when somebody is full of crap or not. And he wasn't. And so I just decided to listen to more of his conversations. And I remember driving to Tahoe and listening to 6 hours of Richard. I'm like, wow, this dude, he's on it. What is happening? Like, well, he just does not stop. And that was my literally like early introduction to Hex. And then I went to, it's so funny. So I thought, I want to talk to those guys and kind of like see what they understand, like what they're getting into. And so my first tweet on Hex was that I posted the chart, and the chart was all-time high of Hex going into a local low, which was 73 or 7.3 cents. It was a drop of like almost 90%. And so I posted the chart, and And pretty much within seconds, everyone attacked me. Everyone from the community. And they're like, "Who the hell are you?" and this and that. And then Richard responds, and he says, "Now do the beginning until today. So like post the whole chart." And so I posted the whole chart, and I'm like, "Yep, it's up 2,600 times or whatever." That is the truth. The truth is that stuff goes down, but before that, it went up, right? And so we just got involved in that first original thread on Twitter. And the funniest shit that I heard from people say, "Hey, you look like you have a lot of followers. How'd you buy them? You should ask for a refund because they're not supporting you. They're not responding back to you."
The engagement police came in.
Yeah, the engagement police. And I'm like, yeah, I bought them with the BTC that I mined in 2011. And then I posted the picture of my wallet receiving like 1 Bitcoin per hour every hour.
And then it became clear really quick.
Yeah, so people couldn't figure out, do I like hacks? Do I hate it? You know, what is the deal? But then ultimately, I think so. Crypto Coffee got me on a stream the next day. And
that's pinned in his Twitter, by the way, guys, if anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah, it's on top of my Twitter feed. And so that was the first live stream conversation with the community, or presenting to the community what I was thinking.
When he asked you, what were you thinking? Like, did you think like I should go on this stream and learn, or were you thinking like I don't want to get in some social weird situation where everyone just flames me, or did you not care?
I didn't care. Yeah. I didn't care about being flamed because I figured if Richard is actually the way I understood that he is, then there's not really nothing to worry about, because I will speak the truth the way I see the truth, and I don't have to pitch a product because I don't have one, and neither do I have to destroy the community or destroy hacks in any way, because I see what I see and I will just talk about it. And that was it. And so I think a lot of people responded positively to that sort of conversation.
Yeah, you mean you had an open mind, basically, is what you're trying to say. And I mean, I'm making light of it, but a lot of people, you know, just in general, are insecure in, you know, their beliefs, and they're just not comfortable because they don't actually know what the fuck they're talking about. And then because they don't know what they're talking about, if somebody challenges on them, they take that as like a personal jab, and they feel that there's a need to lash out because they're insecure about their own beliefs because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And
it happens on both sides. It happens on both sides. So it happens from the Hex and the Hex haters. Hexicans, if I made a project right now, it was the most inventive, beautiful piece of software that was ever created, I would have people at my door ready to knock that bitch down. And that's just the way, that's the closed-minded attitude that's a little weird for me still in crypto, because I don't have that attitude. I could give a fuck. I don't know any of these guys. They don't pay my bills. Like, what? You know what I mean? They don't pay any of my stuff. So I just wanted to think more critically. But yes, and whenever we have a second, there were 2 questions that were starred here that I wanted to ask you. This one from Jerry. If you were going to buy Hex right now, just theoretically, how would you actually do it, like route-wise?
So the way that I would buy anything is that I would open a liquidity pool on Uniswap, and I would set the range to buy it in range. So whatever the range I like. So the range could be 1 cent to 5 cents, for example. And then Uniswap would be buying Hex for me within that range. So that's how I would buy it.
Google range orders, guys, if you don't understand what Jack's talking about. Range orders, and I've even talked about it on my YouTube channel, made several videos about it. You can go check it out. But I
want to talk about that tonight at 6 p.m. as well. Like I'm gonna do. I need to start getting away from Coinbase, so I'm going to show everyone how I evacuate from Coinbase, because I'm not using Coinbase anymore for a few different reasons. Just personally. So I was going to show people like the alternative ways to get involved in a non as centralized way.
Jack, on that note, right? So that, like, if you're going to use Uniswap and you're going to do a range order to get into a position, What's kind of like the portal that you use, or you're at this point, you're like, I don't fucking do the portal anymore because I already have so much in crypto that I'm just kind of moving it around. What portal do you use kind of like to enter into crypto? Like Coinbase, KuCoin. There's one that I'm just learning about called Trust Token
For a regular person.
for fiat into crypto.
We're
Yeah.
trying to figure out alternative ways, so we're asking basically everyone that comes on the show how they kind of operate.
Okay, so the easiest way, and so there was always a risk, right? So the risk of the central control. So so Coinbase can technically shut off at any point, and you're gonna lose all your money. So that's the disclaimer. But Coinbase also happens to be one of the easiest ways to convert fiat to, like, for example, a stable coin. So what I would do, I would either connect my bank account to Coinbase, buy USDC or buy Ethereum, or I probably would not buy Bitcoin, and I would just move within seconds, I would move it off Coinbase. Now, alternatively, you can use Robinhood. So Robinhood just got their wallet on. So you can go to Robinhood, send your fiat there, buy Ethereum or buy Doge, and then have the wallet send it out to an address.
Because I'm in the process of ramping up the crypto holdings, and the Coinbase. First of all, there's a fee, but then it's also they fucking hold my money. Even if even if you do $1,000 a day, they're still holding my money for
They
a period
make
of
you
time.
like incrementally like prove yourself to have more funds sent.
Yeah. But
which is
also, like,
fucking annoying.
they also wait for the bank to clear the funds. So even though you can trade, but you cannot send it out
Yeah.
because the bank may reject the transmission to Coinbase, and then they're going to be left without the money or crypto.
Robinhood doesn't do that.
They also do it. It's the same way.
Is there a limit though? Like when I do $999 on Coinbase, it just lets me shoot it out as long as it's under the $1,000 mark. Once it's over the $1,000 mark, it just puts a hold on it.
There are different limits for different people in terms of how long they've been on Coinbase.
I probably just dox myself as broke. No, I'm just joking. My limit's $1,000. No, I don't generally put more than $1,000.
You know, that's probably is a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because
I would have bought all my hex at 26 cents otherwise. So,
Jack, there's a very interesting thing that's been out for 4 years or so, or 5 years, that I'm just learning about, and I just set up an account. But it's like Coinbase, but you mint directly into your wallet. TUSD is trust token. So they set up a coin. So instead of wiring in money to Coinbase or transferring from your bank account in there, and then you have to wait several days for it to clear, and then you have to transfer it out, right? So you pay a fee to get it in, pay a fee to get it out, plus there's a holding period in the middle. With this, once you set up your account with them, you wire money in. As soon as you get wire money in and they clear it, instead of it sitting there and then you transferring out, it's automatically sent to an Ethereum address, and it's minted TUSD, which is like a top 10 stable coin, and it's fully backed, right? Because I just transferred in 10 grand. Now it's fully backed, and I can go the opposite direction to take money out. But it's super interesting, and I like to hear how other people do that. We have another question here from this person. If you want to read that, GRC.
I can read it. Mr. Jack. Hi, Jack. Can you give your opinion on hex mathematics, like T-share price in hex versus the supply of the hex token? Thanks in advance, Jack. Mr. Mophilos. So basically, it sounds like he wants to, like, what's your thoughts on the T-share ratcheting rate, how everything kind of works in the hex?
Yeah. So I looked into it just very, very briefly. So I actually may not have a total clear vision in terms of how it works. But the way that I understand is that the T-shares are priced in hex. And when you stake on stake and you restake, let's say the next month, after unstaking after a month, the T-shares will actually be expressed in hex in a different way. So in other words, they're going to be more expensive. And the reason why they would be more expensive is because there's more users coming on board and staking. So it's pushing the T-share price in hex
Well,
higher.
there's actually a calculation when it comes to the end stake. So when that T-share rate ratchets up, it's due to a calculation of the biggest. So if you restake, you cannot get the same T-share rate that you had when you initially staked. So it will ratchet up automatically if someone big enough comes in and takes out a stake that would have the same amount or more excess hex to get the same T-share rate. It'll be under that. So it automatic, if that makes sense. Again, the exact
if you put $1 million in for a year or whatever the case is, and you took it out in a year, and if you were to restake for another year, it doesn't want you to get the same rate. So it's going to.
So if a load comes in big enough where they had enough volume and extra hex, and it would have the T-share rate, them have the same T-share rate, it will ratchet up automatically, so they can't. And that's where that number ratchets up.
So I may be wrong about this. There may be a situation where this T-share price actually gets cheaper.
Correct.
And
that's, I think that's the issuance, which you were talking about, the supply and demand of increasing demand. I think.
So, yes. and that is when people are unstaking and leaving the system, because the
people with
T-shares,
this much money, big money.
Right. And that's the other thing is, like, hex is expressed in dollars and cents in USD. So if something goes down 10x on the USD level, then the T-share, even if it's more expensive in hex, has actually got cheaper. Right. So
yeah, I think I bought a T-share for $9,000 at some point, and now it's roughly 400. Or
it depends.
At some point, it was the lowest point. It was like $738, I think.
Yeah, but the reason for T-shares to exist is to basically work with the compounding formula. So Solidity in Ethereum, it is very difficult to run compounding because you cannot do periodic transactions without the person being involved. So when people are involved in doing transactions, they're actually triggering recalculation on the contract. So people are needed for transactions to run, and that is why T-shares are used rather than a compounding method to show how much interest or yield you're getting daily.
Interesting.
Where does that burn mechanism come into that? Because when you stake your hex, it's actually all burnt, right? Like it's all burnt, and then it starts ratcheting up from that T-share rate. God damn it, I forgot my question exactly.
So think about it this way. So you have a number of hex tokens, and then you interact with the contract. You trade your hex for T-shares, technically within the contract, except your hex goes away, and then your T-shares are converted back to hex at the end of the stake.
Or just slowly throughout the stake, it just ratchets up.
No, I don't think it does that. I think the calculation is basically here's your intent for the total number of hex.
You're right, because when you do the end stake function, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
So
that's just the front end calculator would be the thing at the bottom of the hex that just shows you the amount. It's just a ledger amount. That's something that I didn't know. That's something that I didn't know.
Well, so that's how blockchain works, right? So you cannot actually view your increases daily unless something triggers it, and usually you're the trigger. So there's one thing that can happen: you can unstake, and then you execute a function that executes the penalty. But if you wait until the stake and unstake right there at the end of the day or whatever, the same day, then the actual reward is already preset and well known, and will be executed on the blockchain. So that is the difference between, like, for example, the banking system that's giving you yield and recording their ledger, or representing the compounding interest and adding more money into your bank account, exactly. So on blockchain, that's not what happens. It's just not. It's not the way it's designed. It has to be triggered by something. Either you trigger it by exiting early, or you trigger it by unstaking.
Thank you for clearing that up for me, because that did actually clear up a couple of things in my mind that I hadn't circled around to yet.
I wanted to ask, and then maybe we have a couple more minutes and we'll wrap up shortly after that. What are you most excited about, or like trends that you see in the crypto space, maybe in general, or that kind of thing? Like where do you see things, that are most interesting to you right now?
So crypto has there's two sides of the crypto coin. One is the actual technology, and the other one is adoption. So, if you look at my tweet from a week ago, there's a formula with a chart. The chart is showing the world's GDP's inflation versus a cryptocurrency inflation. There's a delta between the world's inflation
Oh, I gotta look at this.
and encoded inflation. And it's the whole thing is a delta, and it's multiplied by K, and K is the world's adoption. So, but in not in so many words, the way that to explain it is that the money will always be printed, the fiat, right? Because the economy will always advance and will always come up with new things and so on and so forth. Certain things are inflationary, like gas and oil, and certain things are deflationary, like technology. So computers and smartphones, you can get one for like $25 right now, like a smartphone. Like 5 years ago, that was impossibility. It would be $500. So technology is always deflationary because we're advancing the way that we use technology and the way it's produced. But the world's economy will always have inflation that's somewhat that's exactly what it is. So the world inflation is the red line. It's an exponential curve because it compounds, right? Where the crypto inflation is a token that has its own hard-coded inflation. Now with Hex, inflation is 3.69, but the adaption of the Hex is the K variable, and you can see that I am multiplied by the whole thing of K. So inflation is actually expressed in K, and the delta is essentially the value. So the whole thing is equal to a value. So anything that has a chance to go up has to have those things available. Because if there's no people to buy or adapt crypto, then there's no value.
Correct.
Let's not forget about that.
100%.
100%.
And what's exciting to me is the world still at about 3.5, maybe 4% of adoption.
We're so excited.
So we actually don't know whether the BTC or Ethereum will be the winners of the day or whatnot. It may be something else entirely, right? But we do know that the more friction we're experiencing in the world today, where people are, first of all, it's like super hyped up parabola going up, and then people are making a ton of money, buying Lambos, buying homes, and then everybody gets wrecked, right? So those are very unpleasant things, but it brings the world to look at crypto and recognize it as a force, right? In both directions, going up and going down.
Positive, negative. Yep.
Right. So that actually great for the space. I am super excited about this whole thing as programmable money. I think ultimately fiat will not be a thing that people will be using, because what fiat is that when you have $100 in your pocket, it's a social contract with your future self against the vendor. So if you have $100 in your pocket and you need gas tomorrow, you have established a futures contract to buy that gas tomorrow at the price dictated by the vendor that sells you the gas. But until that happens, it's just a piece of paper. So if you
that's such an interesting take, Jack. I love that. Please continue. I love it.
So if you step back and you think about it in a meta kind of way, so metacognitively, I would say, nothing that you own is really truly have any value unless you express it as an action with your future self and future self of other people in society. So the way that I see crypto is that we're ramping up in the acceptance and ultimately conversion of the social contracts that we'll have in the world when it comes to value exchange for services.
This is fascinating. Question on this. So, right, maybe 3-4% of global users on crypto or utilize crypto. And then a lot of those people are people who maybe hold it in Coinbase type of thing, right? Who just they're not like in it as far as you are, we are, that we're self-custody and everything like that. Now, when you look at technology, you've probably seen adoption curves, right? And they're always like an S, right? It starts out really, really slow, and right around the 3, 4, 5%, shit just goes bonkers, right?
Yeah.
So when I looked at the numbers and myself, and I'm like, okay, let me cut these down by 50%, and I see around 27, right? 2027, we're probably going to be around 50% of the world on crypto. Is that super ridiculous? Like, it seems like I took the rate and I cut it down to 50%, and then I'm like, wait, that means by 2027, we're going to be at 50% of the world. 8 billion people in the world, half of those people having some access to crypto or holding some crypto.
Basically, the whole Western world.
In 5 fucking years. This is bananas. Is that how you feel about it? Or you're like, you're being a slightly aggressive. It's probably going to take longer because your government's like, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's very difficult to predict the future, especially when given any sort of timelines. I mean, it could be 5 years, it could be 10, it could actually be 15 years. Now, what we don't know is what's going to happen with this bear market specifically, because this bear market is unlike any bear market we have seen before. And the reason is that because we had the fiat stimulating the economy, and then we had people sitting at home, and everything on the technological level as well as on the supply level have been shocked. And what will happen next is either incredibly great or not so great. So I would say it's a coin flip, but I would say the opportunities are yet to come. And I think crypto may actually crash very, very hard still. I'm just speculating again.
I agree.
And I think that would be the time to really, get in and use the opportunity to, to be invested. But at the same time, I feel like bear markets are best for building new things that are amazing for the world. And that's what I'm primarily excited about. I've been through, a number of cycles myself, so it's not as terribly exciting to make, billions of dollars to a person. I mean, obviously, money is important, right? But it's only important in as much of what you can do for the world. So, and that's why I like Richard so much. I mean, he spends his time and energy actually educating people out there on what blockchain really is and what it could mean, right? So I think building new things on blockchain is the biggest opportunity you can have in the world in the next coming years. So it's time to be a builder. It's time to be educated. It's time to learn everything there is to learn about Solidity and Ethereum, and why Ethereum is a better system than Bitcoin. Understand what the scams are and what the scams are not. Just get it done. I mean, and we will be people who do that, they will advance themselves significantly, their life and their friends and their families. So that's what's like really super exciting to me. When
we talk about Bitcoin, and I think you mentioned like you wouldn't be buying Bitcoin at this point if it were you, and you were probably you mentioned something along that line, you'd probably buy something else. What do you think about Bitcoin, the technology? Is it able to be built on in the future? I mean, I've heard all the specifics, right, about what can and cannot be done on Bitcoin, but a lot of it is just conjecture because people, Richard loves to bring it up, right? Richard loves bringing up Bitcoin's old tech, S-curve, blah, 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 like all that stuff. But guys like me that are new, it can get a little dicey. What do you think about Bitcoin in particular as something that's scalability wise? Like not necessarily anything else other than the scalability wise, building on top of it, the future of the industry.
So there are better technologies than Bitcoin. So Ethereum is a better technology, hands down. I mean, that is the truth. The biggest problem with Bitcoin, what I see today, is that the miners are incentivized to mine and dump Bitcoin. That is true as well. And that in itself is detrimental. And basically, we're incentivizing bad behavior. It's bad for the world to basically waste electricity and to send money to China to get better silicon to mine faster. But all it is just a speculative asset. It has really no world's application, like compared to Ethereum, for example. So in Ethereum, what's really ingenious about that system is that the Ethereum's inflation is mitigated by the number of apps that run, or dApps that run on Ethereum. Because every time you launch a new project on Ethereum, you're onboarding the new cohort of people that may be excited. So even Hex, for example, when you interact with Hex that's built on Ethereum, you're paying gas for something. Portion of that gas is burned. So burning gas reduces Ethereum's inflation. That actually makes Ethereum more valuable. And moving forward, I think, and I have seen the number somewhere, the Ethereum's inflation with the proof of stake is going to drop to 0.22%. So
Wow.
1/5 of a percent.
On that, oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish your
No,
thought.
go ahead.
On the chart with the world inflation, fiat, and crypto, it's interesting because one's convex and the other one's concave, right? Like you have one that's going exponential, and the other one is
Logarithmic. It's
Yeah.
logarithmic.
What is it called? What is it, that curve where it tapers out? What, there's a specific name for that. Forget, where it just gets.
It's a log curve, logarithmic
Yes.
curve.
And that's the inflation. I just thought that was interesting because those are going to get wider and wider. But
That's exactly right. So, I mean, I would say, however, there's a big gotcha in the logarithmic chart. The better cryptocurrency would have variable inflation. And the reason why you needed to have a variable inflation is because you don't want your crypto to run up too much so that it can crash harder, because price instability is ultimately makes it uninvestable.
oh,
I agree with that.
playing around with an idea because I don't necessarily, for the foreseeable future, I can see some type of stable coin pegged to fiat, right? But and I'm thinking longer term. I'm like, does a fiat where people are going to hold billions of dollars in this cryptocurrency that is tied to something that's very low quality, right? That is just going to go down in value. Just doesn't seem like a good fucking idea. So I'm toying with the idea of like a cryptocurrency that's kind of like a fiat, but instead of putting things in place to say reduce inflation, like with Ethereum doing that, Pulse Chain has that, and other things in place, or fixing it at 3.69%, I was thinking about it much more of a variable standpoint to optimize for stability instead of variability, and because they both have their benefits, right? People who want stablecoins hold stablecoins because of the lack of variability in price action, versus risk on assets people hold because they want the gains, they want the price gains in that thing.
Right. So
please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I've been toying around this for a while now.
So right now there's two worlds in crypto. There is the speculative world, and then there's the world that actually wants to keep the value stable. And we have two extremes. We have stable coins that are backed by the US dollar, that not supposed to move anywhere, which is a good thing. And then we have the other extreme, pretty much every other asset out there that is making new highs, crashing 95%, that does not present the value, really. It just presents the new technologies out there, and it's very sensitive to the number of people being onboarded. So, for example, Richard often talks about when Bitcoin made its best runs, right? When it was the least known. For people who were buying early, that's great. However, that is not necessarily great in the long run, because as the technologies get more established, you do not want that sort of action anymore. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, because there needs to be an instrument where you can store value and actually not worry about it, whether you're buying the top or not. So the speculative world needs to merge with the store of value world. And it could be, for example, a project that launches a hybrid coin where half of it is stable and half of it is linked to the number of people being onboarded, and things like that. So ultimately, I think maybe in 20 years we'll have something like that, because right now the human motivation is linked to making money fast as possible, and that's why every other project out there that raises money on ICOs are basically not only they're violating the security laws, but they're incentivized to make a killing and then lose all of the motivation to continue to work. Like, for example, EOS. So EOS raised $4 billion. And let's say that you were a millionaire and now you have billions. You would end up thinking, wait a second, that should be the business model all along. So ICO and then done.
That's a great point. Great point.
Nothing else needs to be done because what
got
is
my
the point
money.
of building anything, right? When you can simply disappear into the sunsets.
Because it's fair to say the tech's already there, right? If I want to get a credit card, I could literally press 3 buttons and I'll have a $5,000 balance credit card sent to my house, and I can use it at the moment I click it. That technology is available, but it's just not implemented. Just like you said, it has to be social consensus-ish. Like people just have, more people have to do one thing. The difference between buying Hex, providing liquidity, staking Hex, and doing whatever you do at the bank online, it's the same amount of clicks. It's just you don't know the interface. So I feel like as we get, it's just going to be smoother. Like the credit card companies learned how to make it so I can basically can't even avoid getting a credit card sent to me. I cannot avoid having interface with the credit card companies. I at least look at it. They say they're going to give me a $10,000 balance. I'm going to look at it. Like I'm going to take a peek at it. And so I just think the tech is there. Like we all do this stuff. It's just like you said, people want to milk the system and they don't want to put all that work in, except there's a few guys like, you know, in that you can hope have bigger insights for the space, like you and like Richard. Yesterday, you guys were saying we want to save the world. That's what they were saying at the end of the stream yesterday. Him and Richard, they were saying we can save the world. And Richard, that's one of the things that gets Richard going. Like he's like, let's do it. I got nothing else to shoot for. Let's go for it, right? And Jack's the same way. You've seen it all, Jack. Like, I mean, what do you want to do now? You want to change shit. You want to make it better for people because you have a chance to. Not many men in this world have ever had a chance to change the world for other men. And I think that's what's so awesome about this space. It's like, I'm not educated human, but I'm from school standards. It doesn't make a difference no more. It's about learning and just getting in there and changing the world.
So you guys should read about game theory, specifically the Nash equilibrium. And Nash equilibrium is basically a level where everybody in the system ends up winning. Or rather, when somebody is winning, it's not detrimental to the group. It basically exists across the whole human condition and social structures. The only way for a group to be cohesive is to find an equilibrium where everybody's helping each other. And
that's how
nobody
Alcoholics Anonymous works too. Like that's one of the examples that I went through is like I had to go through some like alcohol stuff when I was younger. And like I went into this community where everyone was benefiting each other for no reason and no incentive, like no real incentive other than that it was helping everyone. That was just my side tangent on that. So.
Right.
Well, that's a good example of like
that was my first
together.
That was my first exposure to that kind of grace or whatever you want to call it.
So at this point, I feel like in the crypto world, there is not much of an equilibrium. And even the fact that, like, for example, all of the maximalists, they're screaming out how there needs to be more acceptance. And they're saying, let's do an ETF, spot-based ETF traded on NASDAQ, so everybody in E-Trade could buy Bitcoin ETF, right? Now, what does it really mean, right? So it means that there will be more speculators within the space. There will be no self-custody. They're just leveraging the fact that other people are putting money in, maybe buying the top, but there's no education provided. There's no education on what the blockchain really is and meant to be in terms of programmable money and how it can help the world to be better. But and what they're saying is like, let's just launch all those products so that there will be more people who are pumping our bags. And that actually means somebody will have to be on the other end and selling into a loss, and that's not great. So that's my 2 cents. The way that I see things is that a lot of people are saying, hey, this is going to be awesome, but in reality, I don't think it will be. I'm not a proponent of easy access to securities that are people using their IRA accounts could be involved in. It sounds like it's a good idea, but in the long term, it's not.
I agree. I don't personally think that if you want to take responsibility for your life, in my opinion, having an IRA or a 401k, I closed both of mine because I want control of my shit.
I dumped mine the second I quit my job.
I just want to take responsibility for that. And I don't want to lock my shit up for 30 years where you get control of it, or like the system. So
at a 17.6% inflation rate that you can't control, somebody else has all your money. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, the truth is, if we looked at everything combined inflation and added everything together, the number was ridiculous this year. You could not outpace that with US dollar, period, during the bull market. I was making a fuck ton of money and I was breaking even-ish. I mean, I was being a little bit doing whatever I want, of course. But this is going to be the time that we wrap up. We never go this long anymore. So this has been probably the best episode of the week for sure, dude. Watching you with Richard say you wanted to change the world is inspiring all of us. I also have similar aspirations to change the world. And I don't keep them to myself either. Like I don't. I tell everyone, and I tell everyone I want to punch as hard as I possibly can. I want to learn as much as I possibly can, and I want to be as open-minded as I possibly can along the way, because I see it just like you did. I can do this channel, benefit from it, and benefit the world of others without having those negative externalities in my life of like some dude telling me what to do, right? Like I don't like that shit.
That's great. Well, thank you guys for having me. I think our next stream should be about longevity and workouts.
Yes, I would love that.
Dude, we would love that. We can do a full, and I can get some pretty crazy minds on here too, like guys that have only studied that shit, and we can have like a little collab, like fucking awesome time. That would be great.
Let's do the fitness lab.
Wait, I want to real quick before we go. You have a website. I didn't look into it before because I stayed up last night, but I want to know what it is because you posted it on your bio, so it must be something important to you.
It's not important. It's just a link tree.
Oh, it's not like a.
Well, you have image. If somebody wants to follow you, right? They're like, hey, this is insightful. Like, I like to follow people who believe in like a better world and trying to impact people in a positive way. How can people reach out to you? Like, where's the best way to contact you? See what you put out.
So right now is Twitter. I'm like all in 100% on Twitter at Mr. Jack Levin. If you want to see my link tree, it's jacklevin.com.
Oh, cool.
And my link tree links all of my videos and various other links that are useful for people to see. But otherwise, just DM me or tweet me.
Thank you so much, Jack. This has been incredible. Your involvement with the Hex community and the Ethereum community has been so beneficial to everyone because you're just open-minded and it makes everyone calm down a little bit and just get to work, because that's what we need to do, guys. We got to get to work, whatever that means to you. Get to work, get busy, be a passionate person. Thank you so much, Jack, for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Very good to meet you.
Biceps.
Yeah, let's get a bicep.
Come on,
Jack. Let's get
my strongest muscle.
Young folks, you tripping on them motherfucker.
Richard Heart. Richard Heart.
Bought my Hex from the fucking start. Point one every day we mark. Bought my Hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my Hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the Hex, he is mooning. Looking at why they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. Pull chains out, now get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex, I been eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Bought my Hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my Hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart.